Since the outbreak in late December 29, COVID-19 has unleashed destruction across the world, and like any basic area, schooling has been hit hard. Understudy schools, universities, and colleges have been profoundly affected. As per the United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization, or UNESCO, more than 800 million students from around the world have been impacted. One out of five students can't go to class. One of every four can't go to advanced education classes. And north of 102 nations have requested cross-country school terminations, while 11 have carried out confined school conclusion. Internationally, north of 200,000 instances of the COVID have been accounted for in excess of 160 nations. 8,000 passings and left a few states managing extreme flare-ups. The COVID-19 pandemic will unfavorably affect the advancements of few states were making around expanding the instruction financial plan. Consequently, this is an emergency that requires critical consideration and aggregate activity by all governments, partners, and networks. Every day, a huge number of youngsters don't go to class because of crisis and continuous compassionate emergencies. The episode of COVID-19 has intensified the predicament of students and nations impacted, and additionally arising out of contention and debate. While the Global Campaign for Education, or GCE, recognized the general well-being choice to close schools, we accept that emergency courses of action ought to be set up to guarantee the right to training even in the midst of emergency. GCE is persuaded that all students, regardless of where they reside and conditions, reserve an option to training. Training is a fundamental appropriate for youngsters, youthful and grown-ups in a crisis, and should be a need from the earliest starting point of all crisis reactions. Governments and the civil societies concerted efforts that mobilize resources and expertise to address the impact of COVID-19 on education is urgently required. This process should include developing long-term strategies to address the needs of education in emergencies. It is according to Gran Jete, GCE Global Coordinator. While in the Philippines, Filipino children continue missing education opportunities in more than a year of school closure. Together with four other countries, the Philippines has kept its schools closed nationwide since the COVID-19 pandemic. We all know that a youngster's first day of school, a milestone second for the most youthful understudies and their folks all over the planet, has been postponed because of COVID-19. For an expected 140 million youthful personalities, UNICEF said in another investigation delivered as summer break reaches end in many regions of the planet. The Philippines is one of the 5 nations on the planet that per-person began face-to-face classes since the pandemic started, influencing the option to learn of in excess of 27 million Filipino understudies. While new variations are causing an accent of contamination, UNICEF is supporting for a staged resuming of schools starting in generally safe regions. This should be possible on a willful all premise with legitimate security convention setups. The first day of school is a landmark moment in a child's life, setting them off of a life-changing path of personal learning and growth. Most of us can remember countless minor details: what clothes we wore, our teacher's name, who we sat next to. But for millions of children, that important day has been indefinitely postponed, said UNICEF Executive Director Henrietta Ford. As classes resume in many parts of the world, millions of first graders have been waiting to see the inside of a classroom for over a year. Millions more may not see one of all this school term. For the most vulnerable, the risk of never stepping into a classroom in their lifetime is skyrocketing. For an estimated 8 million students around the globe who should have been in the first grade, the wait for their first day of in-person learning has been over a year and counting, as they live in places where schools have been closed throughout the pandemic. The associated consequences of school closures, learning loss, mental distress, missed vaccinations, and heightened risk of dropout, child labor, and child marriage will be felt by many children, especially the youngest learners in critical development stages. It is from UNICEF Philippines representative Oyun Saikan Demnovrov. The first grade sets up the building blocks for all future learning with introductions to reading, writing, and math. It's also a period when in-person learning helps children gain independence, adapt to new routines, and develop meaningful relationships with teachers and classmates. In-person learning also enables teachers to identify and address learning delays, mental health issues, and abuse that could negatively affect children's well-being. In 2020, schools globally were fully closed for an average of 79 teaching days, while the Philippines has been closed for more than a year, forcing students to enroll in distance learning modalities. Studies have shown that positive school experiences during this transition period are a predictor of children's future social, emotional, and educational outcomes. At the same time, children who fall behind in learning during the early years often stay behind for the remaining time they spend in school, and the gap widens over the years. The number of years of education a child receives also directly affects their future earnings. While countries worldwide are taking some actions to provide remote learning, at least 29% of primary students are not being reached. In addition to lack of assets for remote learning, the youngest children may not be able to participate due to a lack of support using the technology, a poor learning environment, pressure to do household chores, or being forced to work. That's why word starts with a letter. Sentences composed of words together. Semicolon is used to join two important or more ideas in a sentence. Teacher used to teach a learner, and the learner needs an educator. Eyes that can talk but can see. Mouth that can't see but can speak. Speak loud what you see and share what you understand. How can someone who can read different from those who have disabilities? Even the blind can read now. Even a deaf can deliver a messages. What more to those who are not disabled? Everyone has the right to be part of learning system. That's why I want to encourage every young children to learn on how to read, because someday, on the time that they're going to be the leader of our society, they could use their voice to what they see and give solutions to problems. Also, I want the support of every parents, teachers, and volunteers to participate in my humble advocacy. Read Out Loud campaign for those disabled or not, street children or not, can't read, and those who can read, to help me to hold them and nurture everyone who wants to learn letters to words, words to sentences, and sentences to stories. Read Out Loud wants you to see that we can do if we are willing to step and set aside those hesitations, crises, and let be as their first supporter that they can make it. Read out loud doesn't mean that you must have the voice, because it's not. Read out loud can also be read out loud in your mind, or through gestures or actions that could anyone understand. Let be your stories be heard by learning to read. There's no end if we did not start. There's no chances to win if we did not try. Let's go! As we read out loud to the children, inspire them to read more. Read out loud and read more. Let this be their basic needs and chance to step one at a time to their dreams. Be a volunteer and give any books that awaken their imaginations to reality. Let's begin to volunteer to teach our little hopes for the future. Read more, read out loud, save their future, save our education. Be part of my advocacy. Thank you. My name is Meryl Rose P. Abuyo, BSED 2D, and this is my advocacy.
Read out loud. Read more!